Surprise, surprise, everybody. We got quite the collaboration for you today. Long in the making, Destin. You and I have talked about this in the past. It's an honor to have you here, someone who's followed your work over at IGN and now watching your personal channel grow. It's great to have you on the channel to talk about the future of Xbox. First off, how are you, my friend?
Doing really, really well. It's so great to have you today. If people don't know you, oh wait, that's how I do it. When I
I was
sorry.
gonna smile and nod and
Yeah.
just let you go with it, man.
It's different being on the other side of the seat, but this is cool. I
Yes.
was actually going to ask you to do my thing, and you asked me to do your thing. So I was like, oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to do that, of course. But yeah, it's one of those things where I was watching, for those who don't watch Destin's channel, he does a great series that you unofficially just call Destin Talks to People. And you just bring folks in and chat about what's going on in the industry. You recently brought in Shannon Liao to talk about what had happened with Xbox. She had a lot of the scoops through her Substack leading into the Xbox business update. And I thought, it'd just be great to have you on to just talk about Xbox and the future of this brand. Is, you've tracked them far longer than I, so I thought it was a good opportunity for us to link up, and certainly this won't be the last time we do so. So I just want to know, what are your general thoughts about how Xbox is handling things now, right? We had all the rumors, we had all the speculation. Now a lot of that's been shut down. Did the rumors hype it up to be something it's not? Are you excited about Xbox's future? How are you generally feeling about where things are going moving forward?
I think Xbox is making a lot of very smart moves. I think they could even be one of the first to bring down a few of the exclusivity walls that we have had in the industry for far too long. As we see statements from somebody like Matt Booty, who is saying something along the lines of the game has become the platform, and the device that you utilize to access the game is less important today, especially when we've seen console sales remain relatively the same
Mm-hmm.
as they have since the PS2 era. It looks like the Switch is the first console in years that could potentially outsell the PlayStation 2. PlayStation 2 sold 155 million. PlayStation 4 did very well, didn't outsell the PS2. And I think it's just a really, really interesting time. So
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft deciding to bring the four smaller titles to other platforms, including the Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5, that money is going to allow them to create sequels to the games like Hi-Fi Rush or fund development of future ideas in that scope, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a really interesting time because if you look historically, PlayStation has also brought a lot of games over to the Xbox platform, or their exclusivity agreements have run out and they came to Xbox shortly after they released. Some of the games I've written down just for my memory because it's so bad. Death
I hear you.
Stranding, MLB The Show, which is on Game Pass, by the way. 24 is coming to Game Pass soon. The Persona series, Sifu, Stray, No Man's Sky, Forged in Shadowtech, Ni no Kuni, and Destiny 2 remain multiplayer. Because Sony knows Destiny 2, it's a multiplayer game, and you don't want to break up that community.
Mm.
And you're going to make more money by allowing the player population to remain high, which means your players remain engaged, which means more money for PlayStation at the end
Mm.
of the day. I realize Bungie's having some tumultuous times, and
Yes.
there's a lot of conversations about how Hiroki Totoki is basically laying that at management's feet, exactly where it should be.
Mm.
But the point stands that this is not a new thing. And I don't mean to go on a big rant here.
No,
I had
please.
this
This
whole
is
video prep,
the
but
stage is yours. I opened the floor, and I want
yeah,
you to take it where you want to go, and I'll go from there. So please continue.
yeah, it's top of mind. So all of these four games are now coming out on the PlayStation and the Nintendo Switch, and I think we will see games of a similar scope come to other platforms. But
Mm.
I don't think the Starfield joke that I'm seeing online now where Starfield is going to come to the PlayStation 5 Pro, it's a joke. No, there's no substantiating this rumor whatsoever. Uh, it's just something people have been talking about online. And the overall reaction has been really depressing, if I'm being totally honest.
Mm.
I feel like the community is acting like they've been betrayed. And I'm just like, for these four games, really?
Mm.
Grounded, Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, and Pentiment? Like you're having this reaction over these? We're not talking about Halo. We're not talking about Starfield. Now, if we got to a place where PlayStation's playing nice and also releasing more of their AAA games on competing platforms, then maybe.
Mm,
But right now, that's not the conversation we're having. We're talking about four good games, but I would say that they're maybe, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to the games, but they're probably considered more B tier. They're
mm.
not Gears, they're not Halo, they're not Hellblade 2. Um, so for me, I think it's a smart business decision
Interesting.
at the end of the day.
Yeah, I feel like you and I are in alignment in some areas. I sit on the side of the fence of, I listen to that Xbox business update, and I am trying not to run away with my own biases like fact, but I just feel like with what Phil's saying, and it's beyond even Phil at this point, right? I look at a random example is like Tekken. The director Harada had to explain with the inclusion of the Tekken shop, like these costs are going up. Like we need to sustain this. We're seeing it just all over the board here that like everyone's talking about the economic sustainability of what we know and love. And so I don't think Phil's just pulling that out of thin air and just suddenly conjuring that up as the reason why they want to go multi-plat. What he said to me, we talked about on Defining Duke, and Cog said it beautifully, was, there's a difference between like survivability and greed. And this seemed more like survivability than greed to me. Like they didn't seem like they were just reaching for a couple extra bucks. Cause I think if you were doing that, at least initially, you'd probably want to bring one of your heavy hitters over, right? Because that would be the bigger splash. So I agree. When I listen to what they say, it's very apparent to me that, at least I am of the belief, I should say, that you're going to get these other big exclusives at some point or another coming over. And I receive it as a matter of when, not if. But the thing that is kind of the asterisk next to that is I think when that starts to happen, we will probably care a lot less because it's already going to be occurring in other places. You brought up PlayStation earlier with Hiroki Totoki, and there's been this talk of a shift in strategy for them that I think, especially after Helldivers 2, they have to take a strong look at PC and acknowledge and kind of respect what that's done for that game, even when it had a lot of server issues because they didn't expect it to be as big as it was. That's now their biggest PC success. They have to look at games like God of War and Horizon and think, like, how did we not do better than Helldivers 2 with these? It's because of that simultaneous launch, and of course the game's fantastic. So you're seeing all over the board these companies are shifting their strategy to earn more money. And so when it comes to Xbox's strategy, I think they're going to look smart long term. I do worry short term right now because, they're to me learning from the Xbox One era where I think internally they're probably saying like, yeah, this is going to go multi-plat and it's just a matter of when. But with Xbox One, when they were like, yeah, you're all going all digital, you don't need DRM, you need DRM, like we're going to get rid of physical copies. Like no one was ready for that, even if that's where the industry headed within a decade. So I think Xbox is playing it reserved here, just starting off with these four softer titles, maybe that are people are less attached to. Like if it was Halo, Gears, Forza, there would be a little bit more of a shitstorm, I suppose. But with that, it's actually more of a general economic question for you of, they say gaming needs to grow, to sustain itself. That's kind of where we're at now, where the industry is regulating. We're seeing the COVID bubble pop. I've always asked this question because I'm curious about people's answers to it, where it's like, how much is enough, right? These companies, even Phil said it himself, like, hey, we're always looking for new ways to make money, pretty much. And once, let's say we're 15 years, 20 years down the line, however long it takes, everything's multi-plat, walled gardens are down, does everything become monetized? Like when is that ceiling hit of like, eventually we've reached everyone we can. We're on every platform, whether it be apps, hardware. Now these games are out. They're available to everybody. There's no limits. So what is that next step? It's like you monetize everyone, right? Because now you have the biggest pool imaginable. So do you worry about the potential like red herring of multi-plat, the kind of slippery slope? Because I personally have some trepidations about it, but I'm curious as to your stance on that.
It depends on which games are going multi-platform. I
Mm.
think you need exclusives to keep your platform relevant, your ecosystem relevant. And if they come out a year later on competing platforms like the Switch and PlayStation 5 and Xbox's example, I think that's when you will lose the fan base. They've already lost a lot of fan base for what I've labeled B tier, not disrespectfully, just they're not the same. They weren't the same cost, maybe with the exception of Sea of Thieves. They're not the same cost as, I don't know, Halo Infinite, right?
Mhm.
Um, but in general terms, you're talking about the slippery slope of games. You know, I starting this year, I started this year pretty frustrated, honestly. You know,
Mhm.
we get Suicide Squad, which is just a disaster in my. I hated
Yeah.
Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
Um,
Super disappointing.
E- Endgame had something there, but unfortunately, you just had to go through 10 to 12 hours of rather monotonous and poor monotonous gameplay, poor storytelling, and it was just really unfortunate how that game ended up coming together. And we see more and more instances of this happening in the AAA market. And to me, that's an indication that a lot of these companies have sort of just lost their way in
Mm.
terms of how to release something that really resonates with the audience. You
Mm.
look at Diablo, they just added $30 portals that are color changes to further monetize their customer base. They added a $65 horse, which didn't make any sense to me until I heard it was coming to Game Pass. Not for Game Pass core members, by the way, for anybody above that tier. So that's problematic on the Xbox front in terms of terminology that they're now using
Mm.
for all the different tiers of Game Pass, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at something like Path of Exile that has phenomenal portals and it's like an older game and like they monetize their audience, but you get more bang for your buck in terms of what you're getting in these virtual worlds that we're playing. So there is a way where you can monetize and the community doesn't get mad about it. A $65 horse is not going to go over well. That's insane.
Mhm.
Like you're getting too far. And when we start talking about philosophically about where game design is, we see a lot of these bigger studios who are taking ideas from things that could be earnable for in-game achievements and putting them in the store as opposed to in the game.
Mhm.
So there are no more super cool armor sets that you can get for clearing a really hard encounter as sort of a, oh wow, look at that person's gear. They're kitted out. You just go to the store and you spend $65 or however much the bundle is that you have to buy the currency, to buy the thing that you need to get the cool looking gear. And that's really unfortunate. And it's all because of the monetary situation that we're in, which is what you're alluding to, right?
Yeah.
You want to go further down the rabbit hole with me for a second.
Sure. Let's do it.
We know that games are costing 200 to $300 million to make now, right? And what's happened is these manufacturers have said, well, we have to have microtransactions to facilitate the development costs of 300 and $400 million. Except that's not true.
Mhm.
And Spider-Man proved it's not true. So you can release Spider-Man, not gouge your customer base with an IP like that, and still come up with something that works in terms of how they monetize
Mm.
and makes a lot of money for the company. Now, the question with Spider-Man is, did we really need to innovate as much as we did with Marvel Spider-Man 2 versus Marvel Spider-Man Miles Morales? And the answer is no. And I think that's true for a lot of these games.
Mm.
Game engines are getting more and more powerful. They're taking less and less power. So compounding the problem, and I'm sorry to go all ranty on you with
Dude,
this. I
please.
have a
We
lot
brought
of
you in for the
thoughts.
insight. Keep going.
I have a lot of thoughts about what Xbox has announced these last few weeks.
Hmm.
So going to the hardware side, right? They're like, it's going to be the most powerful leap or biggest leap ever, Sarah Bond said during the thing. And I'm just like, but you didn't really utilize all that power in the Series X.
Yeah. Right. That's the same
FSR
problem.
isn't used in a lot of the games that are being developed
Hmm.
for the Xbox Series X. So you're leaving power on the table already. And now you're going to do the most powerful leap. Will Starfield run at 60 FPS on the next Xbox? Because that sacrifice had to be made in the current generation. A lot of people were like, that's strange.
Mm.
It's a little strange that we don't even have the option to do 60 FPS for your biggest game
Yeah.
ever. So I don't know. A lot of confusing stuff happening right now in terms of
Sure.
business strategies. I think it's smart. I think a lot of these AAA companies are just the executives are running the show and they're making terrible decisions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the concern I had, right? Is that you grow and you have such a wide base that, you know, the gouging only becomes worse, right? You know, they like with Diablo is a great example where I think they're just trying to prey on the whales. Like they're just, you know, the people who just throw tons of cash. Like Diablo Immortal, I know that was destroyed by the internet, but that game made a ton of money for
Hmm.
Activision Blizzard because of whales. Like 76 is another example. I think the game is in a really good spot now. Even if I'm not the biggest fan of it, I think they've done a really good job recovering it. But I think the way they did that was with the triple monetization. They did the battle pass. They did the scoreboard. They did the atomic shop. They had all of these things that you were paying for, and the people who were paying for it, it wasn't a huge base of players, but they were all so invested. They were paying a lot, and I do wonder what that looks like when gaming has all these walls knocked down. Now you can just monetize the planet. You know, like there's no limit. So it's good to get your thoughts on that because you know, I think that's one thing. A lot of what we talk about with Xbox, the problem I've noticed with the conversation, in my opinion, online is a lot of people are talking about like the near term. It's like, oh, it's just 4 games. It's like, I agree. Like it is just 4 games, but I'm thinking 5, 10, 15 years down the line, what this really looks like here. And I do think it's not all like I said, a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow here. Speaking of which, though, we have these games coming out soon. When Xbox announced all of these games, I mean, they're getting shotgun blasted out in the next 2 months. We already have Pentiment out. Hi-Fi Rush is the second week of March. I think Grounded is in April, as is Sea of Thieves on PlayStation 5. So we're getting all of these by April. And I saw Benji Sales said this, so I want to give him credit for the thought. But I do wonder if this means are there more to come by the second half of 2024. I know Xbox said they're waiting, seeing, learning. What games do you think are on this list? Because I think you were right in saying that I like all the games they picked, but in the terms of budget, in the terms of maybe performance internally, like the metrics they hit, I would say they probably categorize as B tier, like the ones that, you know, let's give them a second chance at life. Whether it's Sea of Thieves, which is doing well, it just gets a bigger player base, or something like Pentiment, which is like this small, slept-on hidden gem, and you just bring it to more people as part of that zeitgeist. Maybe it gets more sales. So, what games do you think Xbox could, as part of this slow initiative, bring over to other platforms that may fit pretty well? And do you think we see more of those this year?
I don't know about this year. I think something like a Killer Instinct that I've seen talked about online could
That's a good
eventually
pick.
come
That's a good pick.
to other platforms. And I think it's been out like a decade. It was an Xbox One launch title.
Mm,
So I think if anybody's clutching their pearls, so to speak, about Killer Instinct, it's like the FGC is very welcoming and they don't really care where you play a game. And I think that's one game that would be totally
yeah.
fine to come to a competing platform at this point. And Xbox made it very clear they want to utilize PlayStation to fund future development of exclusive games.
Hmm.
So that's what's going to happen. That's what they're going to do. But I don't think it's going to be Starfield in the near future. I don't think it's going to be Indiana Jones, potentially Hellblade 2. But again, I don't think these games are going to be going anywhere in the immediate future. I could see like the definitive edition of Starfield in 3 or 4 years coming to the PlayStation 5. But I think at that point, I do think that the landscape is going to change quite drastically.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
lot of people snub their nose up at mobile. Mobile just got Warframe the other day. It has Death Stranding running on mobile. Um, I was playing Rainbow Six Siege on my phone. The future is the phone. Everybody talks about how mobile is the biggest growth sector, and it's because the technology on these devices has caught up to the designers. So the technology is ramping up so quickly, we can run things. Granted, it's not Xbox Series X quality, but it's still really, really good quality
Mm,
off of your phone. Now, as the phones improve the tech and reduce overheat and things like that, that's going to be another vessel for people to access these virtual worlds. Like, look at Fortnite.
mm,
That's the future.
yeah.
And that's just where we're at. So the idea of a console, a lot of people are still attached to that idea of a console. That idea has been around since what? The ColecoVision? Was the ColecoVision or the Intellivision the first
Before
one?
my time, I got to be honest. So you tell me.
Yeah, so like I'm just saying the console and the whole console competition thing That has been around since the start of the console. And that was before I was born. I am 42 this year. So it's an old idea and it's not going to stick around forever. I do think that I don't think consoles go away ever,
Hmm.
but I do think the way to access those exclusives, I think those barriers are coming down and we're watching it happen in real time.
I like that. Yeah, I agree. Because if I were to take an approach, if I'm Xbox and I'm looking at my list of games here, I'm thinking to myself like, okay, we're gonna bring more of these over. What's the more gentle ones we do? I think you take a page out of like the Wii U playbook with the Switch and give a second lease on life if you can to certain Xbox One games, especially in light of what they said with Pentiment and what they said about Hi-Fi Rush, like potential sequels. I think a Hi-Fi Rush sequel should be locked in either way, but maybe this enables that, right? So I look at like Sunset Overdrive as a really good example, where finding a way to bring that over. I know Insomniac's tied down big time, and it's me speaking from the rafters right now, just throwing out ideas. But Sunset Overdrive, I think, is like the perfect fit. Like it's an Insomniac game. It's one that, in the death throes of the Xbox One era, just people missed, but it's a fantastic game. It's a real hybrid of the movement systems from what we saw in Spider-Man, as well as the combat and the craziness of Ratchet and Clank. It's fantastic, and I'd like to see Rise Son of Rome get a second chance. I know a lot of people clown on that game, but I really enjoyed it. Like I would love to see that get a second chance and see if they could make a sequel of it, right? And
Crytek's dead though, right?
Crytek?
Yeah.
Ah, man, they're still around, but they're definitely not.
They made Rise, right?
Yeah, they made Rise, but they're still hanging around there, but they're not necessarily where they were with like Crisis 2, where they were just on top of a mountain, right? But I would just love to see that get a second chance. You kind of saw some other gems from the Xbox One generation go out and earn themselves more entries, right? Like Ori left, and we got Will of the Wisps. Cuphead
Well, Ori
left.
Definitive Edition came to the Switch 4 years after it launched. So
Yeah.
like I said, Xbox has also done this. You want to go back even further to the 360 era, and I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
but
you're
like
good. Please.
Mass Effect 1 was a 360 exclusive, came to PS3 before the end of the console's life. BioShock was a exclusive. It came to the PlayStation 3. So like this isn't a new thing. I think it just happened a little quicker than people were prepared for, and Xbox has sort of been on their back foot. Feels like they're finally getting some momentum, and every time they do, it feels like that they do something that their community doesn't like.
Yeah.
And for the community, this one was just the last straw for some of the big names out there. The big names in terms of fandom, I should say. Like you and I probably know who Tim Dog are, but he's like been trending often because he's a known Xbox person on Twitter who has kind of he's sort of like completely lost faith in Xbox. He just has sort of crumbled.
Yeah, it definitely is a breaking point for a lot of people where they just have had intense reactions to what's happened here with the brand, where it reminds me a little bit of like, I don't know how many people listening to this are like wrestling fans, but as a fan of AEW, they definitely had this moment where you felt them step away from like this fierce independent spirit that was kind of fighting against WWE to, as they grew, being a lot like WWE, and a lot of people like myself, I'm just like, I'm not really like, this isn't bad, but I'm just not as into it nowadays. And so they kind of abandoned ship, and I view Xbox and their transition of like based on business necessities as a moment of people just saying like, yeah, that fandom, that diehard love for Xbox, like it's kind of gone now. And so you were talking about Indiana Jones, you were talking about Starfield, how we have these Xbox exclusives kind of in the near term or just recent hindsight here. And I want to know, how vital do you think these are moving forward? Because the big question we get, for example, on Defining Duke is, Matty Cog, like, should I buy an Xbox? And I've actually had a bit of a tough time weighing it out because I think the purchasing reasons are there. I think you just lost a few. Like, I know it's not like a console seller, but I do think Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush were like great complementary pieces to like a Starfield or a Forza Horizon 5 or a Halo Infinite. When you lose that, it becomes a little bit tougher of a sell, especially because now we're trying to figure out like how quickly are things moving here. So I think established Xbox fans are going to enjoy these exclusives, but how vital do you think they are in the near term? Like, where do you have that same struggle I have of saying, like, if someone asked you, Destin, do I get an Xbox? Do you just say like, yeah, of course, you're is X, Y, and Z. Because I know they mentioned one thing I think Matt Booty said that just keeps getting overlooked is like Game Pass only exists on Xbox, which is different. Because one thing you mentioned earlier about like this moving quicker than we expected is I think a lot of us anticipated like, oh yeah, these games will go multi-plat, but it'll be through like a Game Pass app. You'll have to be a part of the ecosystem, and they'll remain like console exclusive otherwise. But now they're just bringing them a la carte over to these systems. So it's I think a difference in that expectation. So generally, do you think these exclusives are still vital, and do you have trouble recommending Xbox as a console to buy into following some of the strategy shifts here?
I mean, like I said, the console idea is old. So if you are on PC and you have a good PC, I don't really know why you would buy a console, especially if that's where you do most of your gaming. I do most of my Xbox gaming on a PC. I have a console so that I can play on the couch when I want to chill, you know. And I have a job that allows me to afford that luxury, right? Not everybody has that. So if you don't have a PC that can run whatever, and you can only get a console, I still think Xbox is a tremendously great value. PlayStation has kind of pulled back on giving away the collection, the PlayStation collection at launch. They still have a lot of strong titles in there, but PlayStation also has a problematic 2024, and Xbox has a great looking 2024, no matter what they're doing with their year plus old games. So yeah, I still think Xbox is a really, really good value. If you're not a PC gamer, if you don't want to deal with driver updates and the NVIDIA update that just dropped today that screws everything up for me for like a few days, then yeah, the console is great because it's sort of a locked box. They make sure all the updates are good to go. Nothing's going to get messed up, usually, on console. Like you're going to be okay, right? And for a lot of people, that is what they prefer. I like getting into the nitty gritty and solving all the little problems with PC. Some people don't want to do that, but in addition to all that, you're right. All of those games are a part of Game Pass. So the second you buy an Xbox, you have 400 games available to you. I think you get 3 months with your console purchase.
Yeah.
And then it's I think Ultimate, what they raise it to, is it $14.99 a month?
Yeah, something 17.
Yeah.
It's in that range.
So that's like $170 a year. Let me do the math here. 150, 60, 70, $180 a year. So if you play 3 games, it's paid for itself.
Look at that. What a sales pitch. Reminds me of some of your viral tweets about Game Pass.
Well, I mean, if you just do the math about it, like I remember when Adam Ruins Everything made his video, and I watched back on what I said. He's like, he said all these layoffs were going to happen. I'm like, he never said there were going to be layoffs. He never even mentioned them. He talked about how something about how Xbox was going to kill the industry, not how not how they're going to lay people off. And then the FTC filed the thing against Microsoft, and it was revealed that Activision was already planning layoffs, which is exactly what I said. I'm like, this is an inflection point for the entirety of the industry. To say that Xbox is special because they have layoffs is just not true. They're just really big, so the layoffs were really big. And the layoffs are terrible, but everybody had layoffs. PlayStation had layoffs, Xbox did. Nintendo did not.
Yeah. It's impressive.
Yeah, neither did Nvidia. Those are 2 companies that made a commitment to not have that. And for some reason, nobody had the foresight to say, yeah, maybe this COVID boom has more to do with the fact that people are locked inside their house and losing their minds. And maybe we should pump the brakes a little bit on hiring 2,000 people at Activision, during this time. There's more to it than the story that everybody ran with. And I felt it was really, everybody was angry, rightfully so. But I felt it was a little not genuine. I'm trying to think of the right word to say that. It's not genuine to just say there was one reason that happened. It wasn't just because of the merger. It was more than that. And yeah.
I think the disappointment, if speaking for myself at least, my disappointment with the layoffs really lied with Microsoft lays off key talent often, and I've always found that just perplexing as an approach. Like there is that level of, okay, as you grow, you're going to have these layoffs. I think everyone expected that to some degree. But when it came to who they laid off across all of these studios,
Yeah.
the big problem to me was like the built-in knowledge you kind of removed from key things that you acquired, like Call of Duty. Like you kind of need that built-in knowledge, and I think a good recent example of that is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I mean, that had a 4-year development cycle, and the reason they said it moved so quick is they retained, I think Hamaguchi said 80 to 90% of the original team. So they said we knew who to go to for every problem we had. So it came together quick. And that game is far bigger and honestly, so far from what I've played, far better than Remake. And they're not the only one. Respawn is another. They came out with a sequel to Jedi Fallen Order, which was phenomenal within 4 years. And I know it was pretty broken at launch. What I reviewed on PS5 was definitely a little shoddy on the technical side, but not as bad as what was on PC. But yeah, these teams are putting things together quickly, and my frustration with Xbox is like you finally got the IP, and now you lay off the talent, and it's like I knew layoffs are coming, but you're laying off like directorial, senior positions, like that built-in knowledge that you just can't teach, and now you're going to have to relearn. It might hurt future projects, so that's where like the layoffs are. That it's like we all know it's going to happen eventually with how much they were building up, but it was just frustrating to see. Also, you're not excited about anyone who gets laid off, but like who got laid off in key positions. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name, but there was an artist that worked at Rare that was like behind some of the original designs of Sly Cooper, and I'm like, that's someone you want to hold on to. That worked at Toys for Bob for a while.
A guy at Rare worked on Sly Cooper?
Or, I'm sorry, no, it was Toys for Bob. Sorry, Toys for Bob.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I crossed my wires with like kid-friendly studios, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, point being is I think they laid off some key talent. And that was the most disappointing part to me from a consumer point of view.
Absolutely. Yeah, I hear that. And Xbox has just I keep thinking that this is going to be the year where they finally like really nail it. And 2024 is looking pretty good. But who they laid off does make me nervous that they are going to figure out how to work with this new size that they have in terms of what all of their studios are capable of and figure out how to get the machine moving in a way that is fluid as opposed to like a lot of these big corporations, a clunky ship that just can't move in the correct direction quickly enough.
Yeah.
I think that's inversely, I think that is a challenge PlayStation is currently facing as they are still beefing up their mobile department, whatever they're doing there. They've been hiring up for years for that, and whatever they're doing with the PC releases. I think Hiroki Toki took over shortly after Jim Ryan's thing. We know there were a lot of layoffs over there, and he's like, Bungie, no, this isn't working. Like you gotta sort this out. Your burn rate is insane. Fix it. And they said it had nothing to do with Sony. Yeah, okay. You missed your revenue targets by 45%. You don't think Sony said anything? I don't believe it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time where we're seeing the conversation evolve on an economic level, which I don't think everyone is always equipped to have, which is why we have so many misleading rumors and headlines and statements being made about all of this. I'm just curious, outside of all of that, if there's any other additional thoughts you had about kind of the state of Xbox, the future, where we're going as we seek to wrap this up.
So all of that said, I think Xbox is in a very strong place right now. I think we still have a lot of Activision titles that could be announced for Xbox Game Pass throughout this year. Just the Call of Duty catalog alone would be a huge win for Xbox to announce as coming to Game Pass. We know there's an event coming in June. We know there's an event at the end of the year. We know new hardware is being announced. We know they have a killer 2024 lineup, especially when you compare that to what the competition has lined up, because it's apparently nothing. The Nintendo Switch 2 was apparently delayed to 2025. The PlayStation 5 Pro, if that's even happening, that's just a rumor. I've seen nothing that seems super concrete, and I've been talking about the PlayStation 5 next gen update for 2 years now, so I'll believe it when I see it at this point. Same with the Switch. So yeah, Xbox, it's their year this year, and hopefully they can continue to foster more goodwill and really rock it, because I think they are set up for success.
Yeah.
I hope that they can get Activision in a better place after
Mm,
Kodak is out,
yeah.
because it sounds like they got rid of some of the. I'm hoping what their strategy was to get rid of at least some of the stuff that needed to get rid of internally, and like the negative. It seems like the lawsuits sort of took care of that. Like the
Yeah.
people that needed to go are gone.
Yeah.
The layoffs, like Toys for Bob, that doesn't make any sense to me,
Yeah.
really.
They're like all remote
Phys
now. Yeah.
yeah, physical media does, but yeah, it was is really strange. And then
Yeah.
they say one thing, they say, "Oh, this is because of overlap," but then they tell the FTC, "Well, there were always going to be layoffs." So which is it, Microsoft?
Hmm.
Which one is the truth? Is it both? Because I think the truth is it's both. So why are you lying?
Yeah. Because
Like,
they're a
why are
big
you
old
saying it's
corporation.
why are you saying it's redundancy? We all know that's not true.
Yeah.
So why are you leading with that? Just paint the whole picture,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, I get it. How I look at things is I'm definitely reluctant to fully buy into a full multi-plat future. I agree with you. I think exclusives are a pretty important piece of the puzzle. I definitely see the economic desire to start bringing things multi-plat eventually. But I do worry about like identity of brands and products, like when you're losing out on those exclusives. Like, what's the motivation to create the defining IP for that platform? So I do hope there is some sort of sticking point. But when you look at 2020 and 2022, kind of vacant years for the Xbox platform versus really last year, even accounting, I know for Redfall, which is a dud, pretty full year for Xbox. And this year they said 10 major games. That's naturally including Activision. Not all of those are going to be massive exclusives, but you look across from like Towerborn to games like Hellblade, and they have a pretty full plate, and I think that's something Xbox fans have been looking for a while. So I anticipate it'll be better times ahead, but hopefully Xbox doesn't step on a rake as they continue on here.
Yeah, the money makers aren't the Hellblades and Avoweds. They're Fortnite. They're
Yeah,
Destiny. And both PlayStation and Xbox want more Fortnite and Destinies.
kind of got that with Power
PlayStation,
World, sort of, but
yep,
yeah,
yep. Pal World could be one that is currently exclusive to the Xbox ecosystem that we could see coming to the PlayStation platform in the
yeah,
near future. I think that one would be like PlayStation's having a crazy success with Helldivers 2. I love that game. I really liked Power World also. Maybe like, hey, maybe we give you a
little
little
trade.
Power World, you give us a little Helldivers 2. What do you think? Okay. And then both games see a resurgence. I've been so happy, by the way. Last Epoch right now is popping off. I played it until level 10 today.
How is it?
It's a ton of fun.
Nice.
Helldivers 2 is a ton of fun. Pal World is a ton of fun. The AAA market has, like I said, kind of gotten into this problematic area where revenue is so important that feel like the creativity is being eroded, for
Mm,
lack of a better term. And it's just so fantastic to have all these other games, which is what I thought would happen.
mm.
I kind of thought we were going to see this reset point, which we're in right now, and we're seeing a lot of these smaller games, Path of Exile, Last Epoch, Helldivers 2, Pal World, pop up that are just like, hey, this is something new.
Man, it's incredible to see because it's more and more we're watching these smaller games that I guess originally you define it as punching above their weights, but I think you really touch on something important there that creativity is being eroded from. I think faith is being lost in AAA because you just know there's a string attached at some point down the line. It's not always the case. I think you look at an Elden Ring and it's like, you're just getting a traditional $70 game and you can just trust FromSoft with that, but that's few and far
Mhm.
between now. So yeah, it's like people are just going where the fun is, and that's games that are smaller. And that's good to see because we want to have that sort of balance and we don't want to see everything rise to the top or fall to the bottom. Not everything needs to be a Vampire Survivors, but not everything needs to be that full price $70 game. I think finding that $40 Helldivers right in the middle is really exciting.
Oh yeah.
So, Destin, it's been great chatting with you. Naturally, I want you to promote and pimp all your stuff. So, where can people find you if they want to learn more about Xbox or whatever else you're going to be doing? What platforms can they find you on?
Yeah, every once in a while, I have a hot take over on IGN that makes me sign off Twitter for a weekend. Sometimes you can see me over on youtube.com/the Destin channel when I don't have a cold that I've been trying to get over. And yeah, on X/Twitter over at Destin Legarie. You can find me there. But yeah, I guess subscribe to the YouTube if you want to check me out more regular.
Absolutely. I'll have that linked in the description down below. I'm sure we'll be doing something together at some point. I'll let my audience know whenever that is. But Destin, I appreciate you lending your time, lending me your insight here to talk about the future of Xbox. Again, everyone, the links to Destin's stuff will be in the description down below. Please check him out. I've been watching him consistently for years. He's awesome. And with that, Destin, thank you so much again. And we'll catch all of you in the next video. Peace out.